Hi loves, it's Lacey and welcome to our space. So today we are going to be making a snowman wreath that I made for my mother to replace her Christmas wreath on her door here in Michigan because it's winter and it's cold out. So we're going to be starting off with this white pine wreath that I got from Joann Fabrics. It is 16 inches and it has a double-sided back. That's two different layers on the wreath form. Then we also have this green foam wreath from Dollar Tree. I also have one of the Dollar Tree microfiber cloths that's in the automotive department. I have some buttons from Dollar Tree that come in these little jars. They're all black. I have this little carrot thing that was from a candy thing at Easter that I saved. Some black felt also from Dollar Tree. And then I'm going to be using a whole bunch of decorations that came from Joann Fabrics, Dollar Tree, and places like such. Also, I have some buffalo check ribbon that I want to use. So let's get started. First, we're going to take the foam wreath form. It's about 10 inches, and I'm going to cut off a piece of the microfiber cloth to cover it with. This is going to create our snowman's head. This wreath actually can be 3 different wreaths, and we'll talk about that in a second. So all I'm going to do is use my Ryobi glue gun to glue down the cloth to the foam wreath. Now you want to be careful not to put too much glue onto the foam because it will melt the wreath if you use too much. I'm putting it actually on the fabric and then putting that onto the wreath form. Now once you do all 4 sides, and I suggest you do them across from each other like I did one side and then go across, then you're going to do the corners, and you can see here I cut off the excess fabric so it's easier to make the corners go in on the sides. After you're done with that, I have some white felt that I decided to put onto the back. I cut it into almost a square, and then I'm going to round off the corners so I can make it fit the back almost like a circle. I'm going to glue it all the way around, except for I'm going to leave a tiny spot open so I'm able to attach the head of this snowman to its body, and I'm cutting off the excess that I didn't make properly along the back. Now what I have here is some black foam board from Dollar Tree. You can use white foam board. This is just what I had on hand. And I'm going to be trying to make a brim for our snowman's hat. So basically I'm cutting a kind of oversized oval, and I'm making the front portion of it a little bit wider, and then I'm going to cut 2 notches on the diagonal on the back portion of it so I can bend it up like I'm doing here. I know this is a little bit fast. I'm going to slow it down here in a second, but this is a long tutorial and I did not want you guys to have to sit and watch me do every little part. I am basically making the brim to the snowman's hat. So it's like a long oval about 6 inches, and then I, on the back side, cut 2 diagonal parts to go up so the brim will sit on its head. Once I do that, I'm going to cover the entire thing with some black felt, just with some Gorilla Glue sticks. So I'm putting a bunch on there, and I'm going to put my felt on top of it and then cut it out around it. I'm going to leave a little bit of an edge around the cutout so then I can glue it to the sides where it shows white on the foam board, like this. And I'm just going to push those up. I'm being kind of careful. I did get a little glue stuck to my hand, and I do have a spatula that's silicone from Dollar Tree to help me do this. I just forgot to use it here. But I'm just putting it on the white band to cover it up so you don't see that white part. I switched to my smaller Ryobi glue gun in order to do that, and there is my little red spatula to help me press it down. I didn't show you guys covering this whole thing with felt, but you're going to do the front and the back, and then I'm just cutting off excess here with Dollar Tree's little craft scissors, and this is what it looks like. Once it's all covered, that back portion is going to tip up, as you can see, and it's going to make the brim to the hat. Now I'm going to take another piece of foam board that's about the size of that brim, and I'm going to bend the sides up. I'm going to bend the bottom of the sides, which I'm just making a determination which side I want to be the bottom, in more than the top of the sides, so it fits around that part that goes up to the brim. I then decided it was a little too tall, so I cut some off, but I'm just bending the sides in to kind of make this hat kind of 3D. And then I'm going to also cover that with black felt. It's just felt from the Dollar Tree. I'm putting some hot glue down on one side, gluing it down, and then I'm going to glue the other side down. You don't have to use a ton of it because it'll stay in place once you cover it like this. I hope this makes sense. I'm going to slow down this footage in a second so you can see it a little better. But all I'm doing is covering up the front. And now I'm going to take another piece, and as you can see it's quite square, and I'm going to decide where I want to put it on the back to cover up the back to complete my 3D hat. And I'm going to cut the sides up so they kind of angle like the back of this hat. I hope I'm making sense. I made the bottom a little smaller and I'm doing the top a little wider just by bending that foam board to fit around the brim. And now I'm going to glue that brim down that's already covered with the felt like this. Then I'm going to take some zip ties, and I didn't have a long enough one, so I put them together, and I'm actually going to zip tie around the bottom of that to keep that bend where I want it to be before I am here cutting that extra piece of foam board that I had for the back to fit the back of this hat. You don't have to do this. If you have another way to make a snowman hat to go on the snowman, go right ahead and do that. Or if you have a snowman hat and you want to cut it in half, or you want it just to be flat on this reform, you can do that as well. But I am making it kind of 3D. So it's sort of like a cup, like a really wide cup in the back, and on the front of the hat it's just got sides to it. You could cut the front and the back and then cut sides to put in. I just bent my sides. Now I'm taking my smaller Ryobi glue gun and I'm going to glue the back onto the hat. And as you can see, it's 3D here. And I'm taking the top felt that was left on the hat and I'm going to cover the back of it at the top. I'm folding it in to make it nice and neat, and then I put a little glue there. I didn't show that. And I'm just squeezing it together to cover up the white on the sides. There's still a little white showing and there's glue there, so I just squeezed it, and now this hat will fit on here just like that. And I want my hat to be sideways on my snowman's head, so I'm just showing you that it's kind of sideways. So you have the brim and you have the extra foam on the back, foam border on the back, and the foam border in the front, and there's a gap between because it's 3D. Now I'm just adding a ton of hot glue on the front of the brim, on the back of the brim, on the sides, and gluing it to my snowman's hat. So I next pulled out some Dollar Tree ribbon. This was from last year. I don't know if they have it this year, but you can use any ribbon. And I'm going to cut off my zip tie now because it served its purpose to hold that together to put on my ribbon around my snowman's hat. And I'm just going to glue that down with some hot glue. I hope this isn't going way too fast. You can slow down videos in YouTube up at the top. So slow it down or pause it if you need to, if you're trying to follow this. And then I wrapped all around buffalo check ribbon with it as well. So now I am going to take that little carrot that I had from some candy from Dollar Tree last year or the year before, and I'm going to cut off the end of it and cut it in half long ways. As you can see, only half of the carrot. And I did that because I wanted the nose to be kind of 3D. But if you don't have one of those, here I have some foam board, and that came from, I do believe, Hobby Lobby, and I'm just cutting out a carrot shape out of that. It's just a long triangle, and then I rounded the back of it, and to make it look a little more realistic, I'm cutting some little slats up one side, turning it over and cutting in between those up the other side to give it some texture, and it looks like a carrot. And then you can just put that on for the nose instead. But before I put on the nose, I'm going to put on the eyes. And I took two of the larger buttons out of that little jar of buttons that came from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to glue those on, making sure I don't get too much glue into the eyelets of the buttons. And I'm going to put them on, and remember, I want my head to be sideways. That's why the eyes look like they're on crooked, but they're not. This is the direction that I want the face to go. Then I'm going to go ahead and put a little glue around the edges of that little 3D carrot and glue that on. And the buttons are just sitting on there so I could have placement. I'm going to go ahead and glue those down. I used 5 of the smaller ones, and I just spaced them out evenly around the snowman's face. You can do as many buttons as you want, or you can actually use yarn and make a smiley face as well. Next, I'm going to take some of this snow. It's like crystal-y snow that came from Dollar Tree. I put it in a jar so I wouldn't make as big of a mess as I already knew I was going to make with it. And I'm adding it to the snowman's hat all over. I actually had to get some paper towel because it was going everywhere. And I'm sprinkling it on, and I took a little glove because I had it stuck to me everywhere and covered my hand up. And I'm just putting it on like snow fell on the snowman's hat. You can use like cotton ball like snow too instead of the crystal, but I had this on hand and I really liked it. So then I have some hollyberry leaves that came off of a different pick that I had in my stash. And so I'm just going to add a couple of those to the hat to give it a little bit extra something. And then I'm going to add a pick-on that I got from a Dollar Tree as well. You can decorate your snowman's hat any kind of way you want, but these are the things that I had on hand and I really like them. I actually cut the edge off the pick for this piece and I'm going to be gluing it down. I really like the little pine cones with the snow on it, and this one has an apple on it. Dollar Tree had all different kinds with bigger pine cones, and there was a couple with some other adornments on it, but I chose that one. Next, I'm going to be taking one of these cardinals that came from a pack at Joann Fabrics. You saw you got 6. I think I got them for $2 on clearance, and I'm going to be placing him in like this spot that I left at the top of the hat there and leaning him forward just a little bit. So I already put some hot glue on there and I'm just sticking him down, and I'm showing you guys exactly where he sits on this hat. And then this DIY snowman is done basically. You can leave it like this. I have this on my wall with just a command strip stuck to the back of it, and it's a wreath all by itself. It's fairly large. The wreath form was 10 inches and the hat's like 6 inches tall with the cardinal. But you guys know me, I'm extra, and my mother actually wanted some extra things on her snowman wreaths, so I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to use that wreath form that I showed you in the beginning and the little house that has the window in the top. I also picked up this garland that has all these little houses on it, and I was going to put an extra one in there, but I decided against it. I'm only going to take off the door off of one of those because this little house doesn't have a door. I'm going to paint the roof with this Waverly antique wax and then use a little black on the chimney, and then I'm going to paint the house a color, and I picked blue because blue is my mother's favorite color, and I'm going to add some Waverly white chalk paint and then paint all the little bitty light parts on it, some of these colors as well. They all came from Dollar Tree in the little jars. I also have this little reform that came off of one of Dollar Tree's little cross skis ornament at Christmas, and I'm going to use that because I keep everything in my stash, as you guys know. So here I am. I took the blue Crayola color that came from Dollar Tree and I mixed it in with a little of the antique wax to darken it up, and I'm just going to paint this entire house. I'm not going to paint where the little lights are or the roof or the door that I'm going to put on this house with the blue, but the rest of the house. And I'm not going to make you watch me paint the whole house. So there it is. It's done. I used the Waverly chalk paint on the little roof, and as you can see, and there I was just using one of my little pens, and I'm putting a little bit extra detail on the chimney just by adding a little white paint on it. I also took the door off of one of those other little houses and I painted it red, and I'm going to set it on the front of this house. You can decorate yours any kind of way you want. I didn't want you guys to have to watch me sit here and paint every bit of this, and so I sped up the footage, and I just didn't even show you me painting the door. All I did was paint it red. And so now I'm taking some white Waverly chalk paint, and I am painting the little string that holds the lights, and now I'm painting the top of the door, the bottom of the house, around the edge, as if it snowed. I want this house to look like it got caught in a snowstorm too, but I don't really want to use the glitter snow that I used on the snowman's hat because this little house is going to sit inside of the other wreath. I'm also going to do the rooftop all the way around the edge and the top of it and the top of the chimney. And I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole thing, but so you understand exactly, you know, my vision. I am showing you enough of it so you can see what I did. I'm doing the whole roof, but I'm not going to just paint the whole roof white. I want it to look like it was snowed on. Then I am taking the different colors and I'm going to space them out and paint all of the little lights. So I'm doing green, I'm doing yellow, and I'm going to do red. I'm not going to do any blue because the house is blue. So the little lights look like they're green, yellow, and red. Then lastly, I'm going to take that little reform. I made it a little smaller. I took it apart and made it a little bit tinier to fit around that window. I'm going to glue that down, and then I'm going to put a little white paint on it so it looks like it was also snowed on. And then it had a little bow on it that's buffalo check, so I'm going to add that back in because it corresponds with the buffalo check that we have in our snowman hat. And we're going to be putting a scarf on our snowman, so it'll correspond with that as well. So as you can see, I'm placing the house in the middle of this wreath. It has a dip in the top because I already separated where the head would go, and I put glue down, and now I'm going to hold it up so gravity will help it stick in the right place. And I'm just doing this for a little while. I did speed up that footage. Now I'm going to put a sanding block and like a paintbrush there just to hold it up so it doesn't fall back as it's continuing to dry. Next, I pulled out some trees from a Dollar Tree. These are ones that they had with their Christmas village. I always have these in my stash all year round. And I'm gluing those in with some hot glue on each side. They're two different sizes, and so I just put one on each side of this house. You'll see in the end, I don't show it gluing it in. I add two more that are a little bigger that were a little different from Dollar Tree in the end of this. But next, I found one of the village things that had a little red truck, and so I glued that in, and it also came with a little camper. So now here, I'm just trying to decide exactly where I want to set the camper because I didn't want it in front of the door and I didn't want it attached to the truck. So I'm going to put it over on this tree like it's in the driveway or something. I also turn around and I add in, though I don't show you guys, a little snowman that's also from the village, and I put it there like it was built by the kids, or it could have been a little blow-up snowman for all I know, but I also put one of those in, and you'll see that a little bit more in the end. So now here I have the two pieces. Each piece on its own could be a wreath by itself. As you see, the head's not on, and I'm going to attach it on, and then the body could be a wreath by himself. You could put a bow on the top right here, and that would be a perfect wreath too. Or if you put them together, you have one huge wreath. So we're going to put it together, and I'm going to use this buffalo check ribbon. This one actually came from Big Lots, but Dollar Tree sells this as well. And so I'm going to have to attach these two pieces together before I actually put on the snowman scarf. So to do that, I am going to end up taking zip ties and putting the head onto this frame, and then I'm going to glue it together. I have two here, but I'm actually only going to end up using one altogether. If you're going to do this, I suggest you take an X-Acto knife, or I have my Cricut precision knife here. I think that's what I call a precision knife. And I'm making a hole into the fabric. I'm not going through the reform. This part's a little difficult to explain, so I'm going to try my hardest to do my best. I'm going to take the zip tie and I'm going to twist it into a circle, and it stays like that pretty much. I'm going to put it in that hole underneath the back and put it underneath the foam inside of the fabric. So it's going underneath and up towards the face. As you can see, my thumb at the top is trying to grab onto that zip tie, and it's up at the top underneath the buttons. Then I'm going to push it down because I made it into a circle and make it come back around that reform. And then my plan was to put it back through that hole through the bottom. However, I had to make a second hole for it to come through the bottom. Now I'm going to wrap those zip ties around at the top facing the back of the house, so it's kind of in the middle. I made sure I put it underneath the middle button of the snowman's mouth so my hat would still be to the side. Do you see that? I hope you understand that. If you have questions, you can ask me and I will try to explain it better, but I just went under the foam reform and back around it, and then I zip tied it too. You probably don't have to do this because the foam is light and you can just glue it down, and that's what I'm doing. I'm gluing it down to all of the pine. You probably don't need the zip tie, but I wanted to make sure it was going to stay on there really tight. We're in Michigan, weather's bad here, and if this is outside, it needs a little extra support. After I'm done with that, I am now going to make my scarf with my buffalo check ribbon. I already cut the ends of one side so I could see how it was going to hang, and I'm going to show you how to cut the ends of the other side. So I'm going to make it long enough here. I didn't quite. I'm going to put it around its neck, go underneath, and flip it over so it looks like a normal person wearing a scarf. And then I'm going to make sure that I make the sides wide enough so it looks like a scarf, like I'm doing here. I'm just going to make sure it's the way that I want it, and then make the sides look wide enough, cut it off, and then we're going to cut fringe at the bottom of the ribbon. I already did the one side, and to do this, I'm cutting up thin strips. Then right next to that thin strip, I'm going to cut a sliver off of this ribbon, just a sliver. And most of them fall down in between my wreath, but I'm going to show you. I'll pick up one in a second. Then I'll cut a thin piece again that's going to stay there, and then cut a sliver next to it and cut it all the way off. And it fell inside, and I'm going to pick it up. It's so thin. I set it there, you can see. Cut a thin piece again, and then cut a sliver next to it. That makes these pieces look like they're fringe and not just like cut pieces next to each other. And you can push them apart and you'll see it better in person that it looks like fringe. And you're going to do that all the way across. So you're going to have all these little slivers that are out. Once you get that together, I'm going to rearrange my scarf here so it just sits perfectly. So it's nice and thick around its neck. It doesn't get twisted. And then I'm going to glue it down. I'm going to glue it down to the pine, a little bit to his face, and then glue it down to itself. And then once I have that done, I'm just going to place my scarf and kind of wrinkle it a little like it's in the wind. And this is done. To attach it to your door or to wherever you want to hang it, I just put some command strips on the back. I already had one on the door, and so I just put one on the back and stuck it to my door, and I absolutely positively love it. This thing is huge. It is very, very big. The white pine reform is 16 inches on itself, and then the head part sits up quite a bit because it's a 10-inch reform. I don't know exactly how tall it is because I didn't measure it and my mother has it already. However, I would guess it's 3 feet tall. And that is it for this DIY. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me for a while. If you're not a subscriber here, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hang out with me on my next upcoming videos. I have a few more winter ones for you guys, and then I'm going to bring you guys something for Valentine's Day. I know most people are doing Valentine's already, but I have one more winter thing that I think you guys will like. So I will catch you in my next video. Bye, loves.